Oh man, Hoosier Nation. Thanksgiving's in the rear view mirror. December's right around the corner. And Indiana sports are buzzing. There are a million things going on. And I know getting back to work or getting back to school after this holiday weekend's a bit tough with Christmas coming up. But you know what? That's where you rely on podcasts just like ours to guide you through. Indiana football season is over. Indiana men's basketball is about to crank up the heat. We're going to talk about IU men's soccer. We're going to absolutely talk about Indiana women's basketball and so much more here on episode 274 of the Hoosier Sound, where we are the official podcast of Indiana HQ. Our mission and goal is simple. We want to bring in-depth analysis and coverage for IU sports to as many fans as possible across a multitude of modern platforms. We're recording this edition of the Hoosier Sound on Monday, November 28th, 2022, where I am your host, Nathan Christian. Here with me tonight are my normal co-hosts, Matt Lukens and Charlie Mason. Charlie, how's everything going? Indiana did lose to Purdue on Saturday afternoon, a 30-16 final. The season is over at 4-8. There will not be a bowl game. Indiana did knock off Illinois and Michigan State in Big Ten play this season. We saw some good with Dexter Williams, although he did suffer a crushing injury in the first quarter of that game against Purdue. Jalen Lucas looked great as usual. What are your main takeaways from the Purdue game, and also big picture overall Indiana's 4-8 season?
Well, let's start with the Purdue game. I think that this game kind of solidified what IU's been doing wrong all year, and that is showing up big in the first quarter, showing their cards, and losing endurance until the last 5 minutes when they decide they want to score again. We saw it against almost every team that they played this year, except for the big losses against Ohio State and Penn State. But this IU team kind of, I don't want to say got it together at the end of the season, but looked better than they did in the middle stretch. Started off very strong, as they should have. That Illinois win really stands out as something that, if you're an IU football fan, you take as a positive. You brag to your Illinois friends, because Illinois finished very strong as a team, surprisingly, which was awesome for IU. Michigan State game, IU a little lucky. I don't know if IU deserved to win that game. But overall, as a season, I think Tom Allen, it took a little while to figure out the right offense.
A little while, Charlie. My God.
It took a long time. He took a long time. But hey, you can't really blame him after the Nebraska loss is where I think it should have been switched, where things should have been shaken up. Up until then, though, you're coming out of a 3-0 start. Connor Bazelak looks like the guy. He's a new guy. He's new energy. We saw a lot of him actually in the Purdue game because Dexter Williams unfortunately went down, which is a tough loss. Hopefully he recovers. Praying for him. But I think that Dexter Williams, Jalen Lucas, we talked a little bit about him. Jalen Lucas,
so good.
Future of the program.
Yeah.
Defense is still struggling to stop the run game, which is critical if you're going to be a part of the Big Ten. And I don't know. I don't know what the future holds for IU. I do know this. They weren't as terrible at the end as they were in the middle. That's it.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Indiana did have a little bit of a late season bump, just as far as intrigue and interest. Dexter Williams, a big part of that. Matt, look, Indiana did announce it's a leg injury for Dexter Williams. He did post on social media sort of saying, he's going to work his way back to the best of his ability. I can't imagine he's going to be ready for September, the first weekend. I don't know. I'm no doctor. We'll see how that goes. I feel like Indiana's going to be looking for a mobile quarterback in the portal, given the success Williams had in Allen's comments after the game about shifting his offense in that direction, unless Donovan McCulley is the answer. I know you watched that game against Purdue on Saturday, Matt. What were your one or two takeaways from that contest?
Look, I think my most pressing takeaway from that game was that one, a lot of the problems haven't been fixed, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And the second thing is that I think it's time for IU to move away from a turf field. I think I tweeted about it on Saturday. We've lost a starting QB and multiple starting players in the last 3 years to non-contact knee or leg injuries. Now, it's not confirmed that Dexter Williams has a knee injury. However, if you watched what happened to him,
Yeah, looks
and
like a
saw
leg.
where they put, I mean, it was a leg, and they put the knee in an
Air
air
cast and
cast,
it carted
so
off the field,
and he can't walk off the field, and his mom is down. You can read in between the lines about what they think it might be, and regardless, what happened to Penix last 2 years on the trot, and then you add in what happened to Dexter Williams this year, and what happened to Dexter Williams last year. I think it's time to start actually seriously considering moving to a grass field. Now, for those of you that were in my mentions telling me that there's nothing wrong with turf, you obviously are slightly misinformed about the recent scientific findings that turf is bad on your joints. It's bad on your joints. It's an unnecessary risk to have college football players playing on a surface that could possibly allow them to be more susceptible to career ending or career changing, trajectory changing injuries. It's just absurd. And for those that are like, well, it's cheaper, the athletic department made a $20 million surplus last year. They can afford to rip out and replace and upkeep a grass field. So that's, for me, that was my main takeaway. It's kind of like, if the program wants to survive and be taken seriously, one, you have to go get better coaching. Two, you have to go get better players. But three, you got to have an environment that is able to foster people like that. And having a turf field doesn't help you. It doesn't really hurt you either. Having a grass field definitely helps you, and players like it more. For instance, on the tweet that I tweeted on Saturday about it, talking about the budget, I had multiple IU football commits actually like the tweet. So that doesn't tell you anything. I don't know what does.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And you can cite all the turf fields in college football that you want to cite. But the fact of the matter is, hey, it doesn't hurt for Indiana football to lead in this area, right? Be one of the
Exactly.
teams that, I mean, first of all, you do have a school like Northwestern that does use a grass field, but you can also be a trailblazer to some degree, or at least one of the first programs that in the Power Five to take advantage of this and to move in that direction. It is true. I was thinking as Williams was getting helped off the field on Saturday how Michael Penix's injuries frequently happened at Memorial Stadium, right? They happened at home, not really in road games. You could maybe think about 2021 as one that happened on the road, but before that, it was mostly, you think about Northwestern game a few years prior to that, the Penn State game in his first season at Indiana, the Maryland game in 2020, and now, of course, the Dexter Williams incident in 22. So you really hope Indiana can evaluate their field surface here going into next season. Overall, I look at this Indiana program, by the way, their rivals on Saturday, Purdue, also a grass field at Ross-Ade up in West Lafayette. Indiana, I know there are a lot of frustrations and aggravations that Indiana's in the same division as Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State, and it's all fair and true. But as I've said many times before, especially in light of Tom Allen's NIL comments, Indiana's got to be better than Maryland, Rutgers, and Purdue. I mean, you can't, before you start thinking about this team as a top 25 program, like Maryland, Rutgers, and Purdue all beat you this season. And frankly, none of those games were close. And Rutgers, as I pointed out, especially after seeing that game in person, Rutgers is a garbage football team. I mean, you saw Rutgers getting destroyed by Maryland 37-0, I believe, over the weekend. Rutgers barely showed up, and they beat Indiana by 10 points in New Jersey a few weeks ago. Purdue wasn't at their sharpest on Saturday, and Indiana, yes, had the serious injury in the first quarter, but especially once Connor Bazelak came into the game, it was pretty much smooth sailing for Purdue until the finish line. Indiana had a major issue all season evaluating the talent in that locker room. Again, a lot of the players we've talked about here, Jalen Lucas, Dexter Williams, Emery Simmons, I think is a good example of this as well. The offensive line, which really emerged in the final couple of weeks of the season, they were all buried in the depth chart when Indiana was taking on Illinois and Idaho and Western Kentucky and Cincinnati, and that cannot happen. So going into the offseason, I'm not sure what kind of coaching changes Indiana is going to make. We'll keep an eye on it over here at Indiana HQ. But the fact of the matter is that evaluation process in those four walls at Memorial Stadium, as well as the overall competitive landscape of Maryland, Rutgers, Purdue, and Indiana's got to do much better at that. You can't feel sorry for yourself any longer. So I know all three of us are looking forward to seeing how Indiana does. We've already seen some player news here with Charles Campbell and Grant Grimmel putting their name in the transfer portal. No surprise there. I would venture to guess 24 players are going to do this, and Indiana is going to be in the works for 24 newcomers. So that's just part of the game in college football nowadays. Devon Matthews did declare for the NFL draft. Sean Shivers, DJ Matthews formally announced the end of their careers. But hey, look, Charlie, I will say I do think the future is bright to some degree with Deshaun McCullough, Jalen Lucas, Dexter Williams, the emerging offensive line. Real quick from your end, Charlie, I'm curious because I know you were in person quite frequently with IU football this season. What's the reason for optimism here for this program going into the 2023 season?
I think something to be excited about when it comes to IU football is the energy that the young players bring to the field when they step on. You listed off a couple names. Emery Simmons, is he returning? Will he be returning?
He's going to be part of it, assuming no transfer portal stuff happens there.
Yeah. Jalen Lucas, those two guys on the offensive side of the ball are absolute studs. They had, Connor Bazelak throwing to him, which, I mean, he was not great at decision making. But when he threw the ball, he found Emery Simmons early in the season for a game that he blew up in for, I think, over 100 yards. Jalen Lucas shows us again and again why he is one of the best kick returners in the Big Ten, in my opinion. He's just got the speed, the elusiveness that nobody else on that team does. If you're looking forward in an optimistic way, you're looking to build around these guys and really try to build your team around highlighting their talents. It's developing a run game, trying to make that offensive line more mobile. It's finding wide receivers that complement Emery Simmons, using tight ends more efficiently for blocking. But optimism, you're looking at the speed that this team has. This new team has energy. They've got speed. They've got talent. They're not afraid to get hit. I think they've got a lot of fight in them. And I think if you're an IU fan, if you hold on for a couple more years, if this team can get it together, I think they can be something real special. So.
Sounds good there. I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of those returners. Just to be clear, Emery Simmons recorded a season high 99 yards against Maryland, if we're really nitpicking. Matt, I'm curious to hear from your end. One bold prediction for this IU football program in the offseason.
Bold prediction is that I would assume that by next year's time, and when they start talking about next year's team, there will be about 75% of the minutes played this year gone. I'm assuming the starters will be mostly new names. I'm assuming from offensive line to running backs to wide receivers to corners, basically most position groups will either be completely gutted and rebuilt from the transfer portal, or many people will leave and then they will forcibly be rebuilt from the transfer portal. So again, I would expect to see IU very heavy-handed as far as going after transfers. In a perfect world, I would like to see them going after most of the top transfers just to kind of completely overhaul and upgrade the team going into next year. Probably not possible, but one can dream.
And that's where Indiana is, folks. After a 4-8 season, Looking forward to seeing all this come to fruition here over the next few months. Indiana will start the 2023 schedule against Ohio State on September 2nd or around that Saturday in the first week. The Hoosiers replace Idaho and Western Kentucky with Indiana State and Akron. The Hoosiers replace Cincinnati with a neutral site game against Louisville in 2023. And then you get your mix of 2023 Big Ten West opponents. Wisconsin gets onto the schedule this year. That's going to be a change from Nebraska that we saw Indiana take place in 2022. The Hoosiers also have a road trip to Champaign to take on the Illinois Fighting Illini. So plenty to ruminate over as far as the IU football program. We're going to be your one-stop shop for all the IU football news that takes place, whether it's sometime later tonight on Monday or over the course of the next 6 to 8 to 10 months here, as Indiana looks now ahead to spring football, as Purdue will take on Michigan in the Big Ten championship game. Now we're going to get you a quick turn over to IU basketball, but first, time for Who Won the Week this past week in IU sports, and we have to tip our cap to the IU men's soccer program, who advanced to the Elite Eight after knocking off Marshall in the Sweet 16. Indiana with a 1-0 win, tense as usual as far as the NCAA soccer tournament is considered. Hoosiers now take on UNC Greensboro in the Elite Eight. That's a road game on Saturday, I believe. It's a 5 Eastern kickoff, and I can't wait to see Indiana make another trip to the Final Four after the Hoosiers took care of business in the Sweet 16. It wasn't the smoothest regular season for the team this year, but they're really getting their stuff together during the NCAA tournament now, one of 8 teams remaining on the men's soccer side. Folks, if you'd like to subscribe to our podcast for free, all you have to do is search for The Hoosier Sound wherever you listen to podcasts. Stay up to date with all of our information by following us on Twitter at Indiana HQ and at The Hoosier Sound. If you enjoy our show, leave us a review, tell a friend, share our links. Your support really helps us grow this podcast and reach more passionate IU fans such as yourself. All right, guys. Indiana's men's basketball team is 6-0. The Hoosiers are up to number 10 in the AP poll. Not quite where the women's team is, folks. The women are at number 5, but top 10 Indiana men's basketball. They are ranked 11th in KenPom. The Hoosiers took care of business over the last week or so with wins against Miami, Ohio, Little Rock, and Jackson State. All wins by 20-plus points. Matt, 3 games that Indiana was expected to win. What stood out to you in the Hoosiers' victories over those 3 teams that I think most would categorize as cupcakes on Indiana's schedule this season?
Yeah. So there's not much you can take away from beating cupcakes, to be fair, other than one, please get our guys healthy. And 2, it was nice to see some guys have some particularly nice performances. Yes, against, lower ranked, obviously terrible cupcakes. But, to be fair, they have to perform with who and what team they are facing against. So for instance, last game, Tamar Bates had 22 off the bench. That was awesome to see. We've been talking about how important it is for Tamar Bates to have a kind of breakout year this year. And, to start the season, he wasn't looking too hot. Looking better now. So maybe he can bring a little bit of momentum into a game in which he'll probably see a ton of runtime against North Carolina. We'll talk about that in a bit. We play them on Wednesday. The second guy I thought was very impressive was Malik Renew. Again, Trace Jackson-Davis was out for multiple games, or he was out for one game, but then barely played in a couple of the other one. Yeah, so he was very impressive in the minutes that he played. He stepped up, looked fantastic, looked like way more mature than a normal freshman does. Again, that was fantastic. And then I think the last guy that impressed me the most, again, he didn't have a really super standout game per se, but I thought Jordan Geronimo looked fantastic in the minutes that he played against smaller opponents. Now, let's see how he does Wednesday, being put in against, starters for North Carolina and a team that, was in the national championship last year. We'll get a real sense about where the players are at in that game. But again, happy days. We covered in 2 out of the 3 games, and the one game that we didn't cover was the game that Tracy Davis played 0 minutes in. So again, all good stuff from the Hoosier program and from the basketball team so far this year. It's just kind of like it's sad that the team up north that we don't like talk about too much is having a ridiculous start to the season, and it's kind of taking away from the shine of Indiana. Also, it doesn't help that our opponents for the game, North Carolina, have decided to be terrible again.
Yeah.
So again, I expect Indiana to win on Wednesday, and I really like where the basketball program's at. It's just kind of like, it kind of sucks that North Carolina went and ruined this what would have been a very, very special game in Assembly Hall. It's still special. It's still UNC in
Sure.
Assembly Hall,
Yeah.
but it's not number one UNC coming to Assembly Hall after winning the PK80, because of course they went and lost 2 games. So good for them.
And they almost blew a third. That first game in Portland, they almost lost to Portland, and that would have been tough.
Yeah, they're not looking good.
They're not.
They really aren't.
We're gonna have a full preview for that game a little bit later on. Charlie, we did see Miller Kopp continue to hit about half his 3-point attempts. Xavier Johnson looks like a reliable presence on the floor, more so than maybe at the early part of the season. And just to be fair, like when Trace Jackson Davis did play in those 2 other games, he was exceptional as usual, carrying that torch. What were your big, conclusions drawn here from the last few games that Indiana won all 3 comfortably?
I think there are 2 things that stand out to me most, and they both have to do with the starting lineup. There's a lot of chatter on campus here, a lot of very passionate IU fans. I'll keep them anonymous, but a lot of people wanted to see Malik Renew in the starting lineup over Race Thompson early on. They were high on Malik Renew, and it's not a terrible take. Don't get me wrong. It's not a terrible take. To be fair, Race Thompson wasn't performing at the level that we thought he was going to in the first 2 or 3 games. It wasn't that he was underperforming. He was just working as a role player, and Malik was stepping up on that second team as a star. So it was kind of like Malik was replacing Trace Jackson Davis on that second lineup. People may not have gotten that sense. Whatever. These past 3 games, Race Thompson has secured his spot in my starting lineup because he really stepped up, especially against Little Rock, dropping
Very
20
true.
points. I mean, 20 points is 20 points. And when you don't have Trace Jackson Davis in the lineup, somebody has to step up, and he definitely took the wheel. So he proved that he was capable to take over when Trace Jackson Davis isn't feeling well, when maybe some of the power players aren't doing so hot. He can step up in winnable games. We talked about how Nebraska is coming up. Maybe, God forbid, anything happens to anybody. There are reliable players on this bench in this starting lineup that can step up for maybe some of the big dogs that can't perform. Another takeaway I have is Xavier Johnson. You just mentioned him. He was stepping up. He was 10 assists, I think, in one of the games, which was awesome. He's definitely taking more of a role player type of vibe than I think I expected. I watched him in the first couple of games in the exhibition games. He wasn't doing well at all. He was driving a lot more than he should have, trying to be a senior that kind of shows off in a way. You're a senior, it's your last year. You're going to try to score some points, rile up the student section. And it wasn't working for him. So he stepped back and he kind of proved, thank goodness he did, because Tamar Bates stepped up, and that could have been, a replacement if Xavier Johnson didn't figure out where he needed to be, but he did. Him and Hood Shafino working together is it's music. It's incredible to watch, and hopefully it continues and they grow and kind of learn from each other. But I think the young guys are really stepping up. I think that this UNC game is going to be a test, not as big of a test though. We talked about how UNC dropped 2 games, not as big of a test as maybe some fans would have hoped. But that Arizona game is creeping up, and they are turning out to be a team, man. They are turning out to be the real deal. So I think that this Arizona game may have replaced UNC as the toughest challenge of 2022.
Remember, Kansas also dropped a non-conference game here since our last podcast episode as well. It's interesting to
Kansas
see
doesn't look
how
too hot.
they're trying to see how all this shakes out. Indiana is 6-0. That's the most important thing. Hey, shout out to the improvements on the offensive side of the floor. IU has scored at least 80 points in all 6 games this season, one of very few teams to do so. I believe Arizona and UConn were the other two at last check. I'm not sure if Arizona or UConn ended their streaks here over the last few days, but Indiana now in a good spot here. Overall, the injury situation looks pretty clean going into this North Carolina game. I want to see more of CJ Gunn and Caleb Banks, and I don't know how exactly we make that happen, but whenever those two guys are on the court, it looks interesting. And I know I probably have to wait till next season to really see that kick into high gear. But anyway, I just want to give them one more shout out. I don't know how much we'll be giving CJ Gunn and Caleb Banks compliments throughout the rest of the season, but every time I see those guys on the court, especially Caleb Banks looks like someone who may be physically ready for the NBA already. Now he obviously needs to hang around some seasons, at least one more season at Indiana. But oh man, when I watch Caleb Banks, I get super pumped.
Yeah,
Now,
me
folks,
too. Yeah, me too. I agree. For the first time since Tom Crean, I actually look up and down our roster, and I like every single player on it.
Well, Miller Kopp, you like Miller Kopp too, Matt?
I do like Miller Kopp because
Okay.
at least he could shoot the ball, right? Like he doesn't
and
do
to his
everything
credit,
well.
50%.
He doesn't do
But
everything
on how many
well. He shoots 50%. That's fine. Again, to his credit, he comes in and he's at least a weapon, and something that teams actually have to think about. There's many I can go and name names. I'm not going to talk about Zach McRoberts. I'm not going to talk about Demezy Anderson. I'm not going to go in there.
Dear.
Okay.
Oh boy.
I wouldn't do that. But there was players on the roster previously under Archie Miller where I just kind of went, why are they here? And under Tom Crean, people go like, well, there was Tim Priller, but then at the same time, the other 12 players would have been interesting, or projects, or possibly NBA players. Even on Tom Crean's last team, he had 3 NBA guys on that team, right?
Yep.
He also had Josh Newkirk, but he had 3 NBA guys on that team. So again, for the first time I look at this team and you say, oh, I like Caleb Banks, I like CJ Gunn. I go, heck yeah, I do. And then I'm watching with other Big Ten fans, and they're like, oh God, that guy looks good. Oh God, that guy looks good. It has been 5 years since Indiana has had a team where opposing fans have gone and watched games as basically a neutral perspective and gone, who's this guy? Right off the bench. Who's this guy? Nobody was doing that for Zach McRoberts. I promise you that. You saw Demezy Anderson's shot. Nobody was like, I wonder who Demezy Anderson is. So again, I really like what's happening with the program. I like where it's going. I really genuinely believe in what the staff is trying to do with the players and their vision for building the program, which is super nice. I can see the blueprint for it now. It's just they got to go start winning big games, and it starts with Wednesday.
Here we go. I will say, I was a little harsh on Miller Kopp. I will say, I do think in close games here, perhaps as early as Wednesday night, he's going to be important as far as nailing some of those clutch free throws. I just wanted to be clear. I'm not a Kopp hater. I was just playing devil's advocate a little bit.
That's true though. He does have to prove himself in big games. Again, this whole team has to prove themselves in big games. They are stepping up into an echelon of college basketball, an area in which the program hasn't been in a couple of years, right? And hasn't been comfortably there in maybe 20 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And so again, you're a top 10 ranked team at home against a team that is struggling. You can't come out here and honestly, if you want me to be honest, the way North Carolina has played so far this year, you can't have a close game with them. You can't. They have looked awful. They play 6 people. They've just coming off a 4 overtime game. They don't even get to go home. They have to come back and stay in a hotel room for 3 days in Bloomington before they play. They're coming off 2 losses. Their starting center might be out for this game, or is at least going to be a little bit hampered from a lingering injury in Armando Bacot. And the fact that it's going to be a raucous Assembly Hall. This better be a 20-point win. I'm not even going to lie to you, because anything less than that, there are going to be people in the national media. Probably will be still people in the national media after beating them and giving them the 3rd loss, but there will definitely be more people in the national media kind of going, is Indiana actually a top 10 team? When it would have been a raucous, celebration of sorts, a core, what was it? A crowning,
Yeah,
a coronation for Mike Woodson if it had been number 1 undefeated UNC coming in, regardless of if they played like crap or not up to that point. A unanimous coronation of Mike Woodson bringing the program back. Now, that's not going to happen this game. There's not going to be unanimous reception for that, but there is the chance to finally kind of push away some of those demons that early on in the season Mike Woodson can't figure it out and win big games. Last year he struggled early on in non-conference. Let's see what Indiana can do this year. They struggled early in Big Ten play, and they eventually figured it out. It would be nice for the rest of the staff and for the players to build the confidence of beating UNC at home, even though, like I said, they're not really the number 1 team in the country, guys. They've looked awful up until now.
No, they're not. And we've got a full-scale preview coming up right now for North Carolina. Stick around, folks. We're also going to take a look at Rutgers, which comes up on Saturday. And technically, according to the computers, is a tougher matchup for Indiana than this North Carolina game on Wednesday. Double preview action coming your way. As of right now, Indiana takes on North Carolina Wednesday night at Assembly Hall. It's a 9:15 Eastern start on ESPN. It's Indiana's 2nd non-conference test after winning at Xavier about a couple of weeks ago. Xavier, by the way, 32nd in the KenPom, and you've got a true road win there in Cincinnati in your resume. Dan Schulman, Jay Billis, and Brooke Weisbrod will be on the call. North Carolina officially down to 18th in the AP poll after their PK 85 struggles. The Tar Heels are 21st in the KenPom ratings. KenPom likes their offense much more than their defense. KenPom has their offense at number 12 in the country. The defense, though, sits at number 47 in college basketball. Hubert Davis is their head coach. The Tar Heels are coming off a national championship game appearance against Kansas last season. The Tar Heels did beat arch rival Duke in the Final Four to send off Mike Krzyzewski. The Tar Heels came in as preseason number 1. But Hubert Davis, their coach, plays basically a 6-man rotation, as Matt pointed out a moment ago. Caleb Love, RJ Davis, Leaky Black. Northwestern incoming transfer Pete Nance takes over for former North Carolina transfer forward Brady Manick. And then you've got Armando Bacot starting at center. But as Matt pointed out, Bacot's got a bit of an ankle injury. Ankle pain, I believe, is the word that Bacot used. We'll monitor his availability going into Wednesday night. Puff Johnson comes in off the bench for the Tar Heels. Charlie, North Carolina plays kind of fast. This should be a pretty good flow on Wednesday night. They don't take too many threes, but they do a good job of getting to the foul line and making those foul shots, especially in crunch time. What are 1 or 2 keys to victory you're paying attention to here as Indiana takes on North Carolina Wednesday night?
I'm looking for a fast start. You said North Carolina plays fast. If IU can come out hopping, 20 points in the first, I don't know, less than, I don't know what a good time is.
5, 6
20
minutes,
quick
yes.
points.
Yeah.
6 minutes, yeah. 20 points very quickly. If you can build a lead of over 7 or 8, or if you can build a lead of at least 10 going into the half, come out with a new game plan, firing on all cylinders, I think that you can really bottle this North Carolina team up and keep them weak. Hit them while they're down. But you have to remember this Alabama game, this North Carolina team lost to Alabama. Not a bad team at all. 4 overtimes. And when you get in a game like that, it's anybody's game. When you get into overtime at all, it's anybody's game. Yeah. So that's not an excusable loss, but one that I'm not going to take too much away from. Iowa State is the other loss for this North Carolina team, who have proven themselves.
Yeah.
This Iowa State team is ranked. I think they're 22, 23, something like that. 23 maybe. Yeah. Dropped to Connecticut But UNC kept it close. They've had two very close losses. I think this 18 ranking, it's not harsh because it's early in the season. When you're 5-2, it's kind of difficult to argue your way into a top 15 position. But this North Carolina team still has a lot of fight in them. Nathan, you mentioned earlier how they have a 6-man kind of rotation. They don't really play. They're not very deep, which IU, I think, can take advantage of because IU might be the deepest roster in the NCAA right now. In my opinion, I think they are. I think that dominating down low is really going to give them, obviously, IU's strong suit is the paint. They've got Trace Jackson-Davis, Rex Thompson, and now they've got Malik Renew. Honestly, if you're struggling to make anything happen in the paint, you put in Malik Renew instead of Miller Kopp for 5 minutes. See what happens, Malik Renew, Race Thompson's a mobile guy. Race Thompson can cover the same ground that I believe Miller Kopp can. No shade to Miller Kopp, but Race Thompson is a very athletic figure. And I think that he can handle Miller Kopp's spot. He's a good perimeter shooter. We've seen it before. But if you're IU heading into this North Carolina game, you're focusing on getting up early, keeping that lead, mixing things up in the paint, trying some new things, some new combinations, maybe mixing that second and that first and second team a little bit, utilizing Tamar Bates and Xavier Johnson's quick drives because those guys are so speedy. Catching their guards off, like throwing them off is going to be number one. Mixing up that backcourt. And then if you can shoot the 3-ball, obviously it's not going to hurt. But honestly, I don't want to focus on the 3-ball. If you can make everything else, if you can hit your free throws, you don't have to worry about the 3-ball.
Hey, look, Indiana is making 38% from 3 on the early season thus far. I'll be curious to see how that tracks over the course of the next couple of weeks as Indiana goes through this gauntlet coming up, as we've talked about here, North Carolina, and then a road trip to Rutgers, then Nebraska at home, and then neutral against Arizona, and then a road trip to face Rock Chalk Jayhawk. And Matt, who are 1 or 2 Hoosiers you're looking to step up here? Definitely an interesting matchup. North Carolina is going to be in that underdog mentality that really propelled them in the NCAA tournament last year when they've got superstars at multiple positions. Who are 1 or 2 Hoosiers you're looking to see step up on Wednesday night?
For me, one, I don't agree with Charlie's assessment of North Carolina. No offense, Charlie. I think that they've actually had a terrible start to the season. All of their games that they've played outside of James Madison have been extremely close. For instance,
even the
the
cupcakes.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. UNC, Wilmington, Charleston, Gardner-Webb were all either tied at half or tied with 4 minutes left in the game. They played all of them close.
James Madison outscored them in the second half, by the way.
James Madison outscored them in the second half, and they were very lucky to get away from beating Portland. They very much could have lost that game if a couple calls didn't go their way. And they didn't hit their free throws. They would have absolutely lost to Portland. So and Michigan State almost lost to Portland as well. But again, they shouldn't be losing to these teams. They're coming off a finals appearance. Final game in the Final Four, right? Like again, they were the preseason favorites to win the championship. Blah, 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 blah. So they've had a rough start to the year, especially to what their standards are for the team. Now, as far as Indiana goes, who I'm looking for Indiana to step up, most of the scoring and shooting and offense revolves around a former IU target, recruiting target in Caleb Love.
Yes,
so again, the offense usually revolves around him. I think what did you say? He had 36 shots.
36. I mean, 4 overtimes, but still 36 shot attempts for North Carolina against Alabama Sunday.
Right. And then RJ Davis as well. Both of them like to get the ball in pick and roll situations. And either
he had just 24 shots on Sunday night.
Yeah, exactly. But both of them, they share the workload as far as shots goes. Armando Bacot, their center, is more of a he's more like Trace. Like he's not going to dominate. I guess Trace can dominate the ball. I'm trying to remember who IU has had that was so just analytically, just very what's the word I'm looking for? Efficient. Yeah. He's very efficient on the ball. He doesn't need the ball, but when he gets the ball, he's very good with it. That's Baycott, very good rebounder. And then Leaky Black and the Northwestern
Evan Fitzner,
transfer.
that's who it was. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh my God! Speaking of people on Archie Miller's roster that I don't want to ever talk about or see again. No. Yeah, no, exactly. That completely threw me off. But anyways, rant over. Basically, IU, what they need to do is have their best guard defense they've had all year. So I'm looking at Xavier Johnson to not get a hot head. He's probably gonna get some stupid fouls called against you. The way they play is tough. And then the second thing is Jalen Hood-Schifino did not have his best defensive game against Xavier. Again, it's on the road. It's his first road game against the Power 5 school, whatever. He will have learned a lot from that. This is a tough matchup for him because, again, he's going to be up against RJ Davis, who, again, has a ton of experience, sophomore for a really primed breakout candidate in or a primed national championship candidate in UNC. He's going to get picked on. He needs to stay out of foul trouble. He wasn't able to do that against Xavier. He needs to try to find a way to do that against UNC. He'll have a better time doing that if IU has their full depth. Again, where we were without Trey Galloway, I believe, for the Xavier game. Is that correct?
Correct.
I'm
sorry. Galloway did play that game, but he's missed each of the last 3.
Right. We've been without Galloway in the last 3 games. It would be nice to get him back. Again, people that are going to guard North Carolina's guards, which is mostly everybody. Again, Indiana switches 1 through 5, right? Again, you're going to have to contain them by using ball pressure or forcing them into uncomfortable situations. And the pick and roll coverage on Wednesday is going to have to be in top shape. Again, Indiana's defense is supposed to be their best, part of the team coming into the year. It still is, according to Ken Pom. However, it's taking a couple steps back, a couple numbers back. It went from top 10 to now 14. It should be a top 10 defense the way they play. Maybe they're just kind of working in, some new pieces, right? Hood-Schifino wasn't part of the team last year. Malik Renew wasn't part of the team last year. Whatever. Offensively, Indians look better. Again, I will go back to say Xavier Johnson is another one of those big players I need to see step up in this game. You've been shooting the ball well the last 3 games. He was very, very good against Xavier. We need another Xavier type performance from Xavier Johnson.
Xavier. And by the way, I did get a handle on it. It is Xavier Johnson formally, and it's Xavier University. Makes sense of that.
Okay, so Xavier needs to have a Xavier type performance against UNC. If IU wants to win by the margin that I think they will win by, which is like 15 plus.
And Ken Pom has this one by Indiana by 6. So, that's where your expectations are there, Matt.
Yeah, but Ken Pom does not take advantage or does not count what a whiteout in Bloomington is going to do. Again, it's their first true road game of the year. They've played all these games, especially the last couple on a neutral court, right, in Portland, where they had literally 0 fans.
It was horrible. I mean, soapbox moment. I mean, if we're going to have neutral site events, can we at least fill the place out? Maui's filled out. Portland, it was not. That's freaking disgraceful, if you ask me, Matt. Not that I'm bothered by this, clearly.
There was nobody there, but again, I feel bad for Phil Knight. I mean, he's just gonna go cry about no attendance into his billions and billions of dollars he earns for Nike every year. I mean, it's really just a sad time for the Knight family, I'm sure. No, again, look, IU, I've seen people talk about IU not playing in these Thanksgiving tournaments, like IU's not going to be playing Kansas and Arizona in their non-conference schedule. I think I saw Seth Davis talk about it. 1, F you, Seth Davis. And 2, I don't know, IU's supposed to, you want them to go play in Portland so you can go write about them and have a cocktail while watching them play, and nobody can see you have a cocktail because there's only 25 people in the audience? Like, come on. There's nobody there for the Purdue game. The Purdue game was the championship game of their side of the PK80.
Unfortunate. Yeah.
And there was Purdue Duke, and there was like nobody there. It's like prime time, ABC.
Well, and remember, also, we can't overlook the fact that in Portland is where Indiana lost to St. Mary's in the NCAA tournament last year.
That's right. I don't like Portland. I hate that town. I'm never going back to Oregon. Eugene's fine. Portland.
We did have I think it was New Mexico State and VCU wins back in the 2012 NCAA tournament, but that was many moons ago. I think the point you had made there,
Portland
Matt,
ain't the same.
It's not the same. Look, Indiana's biggest player, I think, is going to not be someone in a jersey, but it's going to be a facility, and that is Assembly Hall. And it's going to be freaking incredible to take it in. Charlie is going to be there for us, covering with boots on the ground for Indiana HQ. Then I'll take his place Saturday afternoon in Piscataway, New Jersey. It is going to be a surreal atmosphere. And that's where I think Ken Pom is a little bit off the mark. I think home court advantage gets about 3 points. I literally think this home court advantage will be worth double digits as far as how much of a boost it's going to give.
Ridiculous.
How much of a boost it's going to give Indiana. And for me, I'm squarely focusing on Indiana's guards in this matchup. Xavier Johnson, Jalen Hood-Schifino, and Tamar Bates, especially when I zoom out. And this isn't meant to be an insult to these players I'm going to mention here, but Rob Finney has gone scoreless in his last couple of games at Cincinnati. He really struggles to get in the scoring column for the Bearcats. Christian Lander had a 13-point outing early in the season, but he's had most of his games result in 4 or fewer points this year for Western Kentucky. You also go look at someone like Michael Durr, who went to UCF. Yes, he's a big man, but he rarely finds his way into the scoring column, even though all 3 players, Finney, Lander, and Durr, are getting playing time at their new schools. Just not putting the ball in the basket. And that's where I really see Xavier Johnson, Jalen Hood-Schifino, and Tamar Bates giving Indiana that push to get them over those 80 points every single game. And I think Indiana is going to have to do that again on Wednesday night. I think North Carolina is going to find ways to score against the Hoosiers, but Xavier Johnson, if you can mark him down for double digits, and Tamar Bates, if you can mark him down for double digits, and if Jalen Hood-Schifino doesn't get there, if he can still put together 6, 7, 8, 9 points, rebound, assist, facilitate to share the ball to everyone else, I am so pumped to watch those 3 guards who, again, they weren't in this program 2 years ago in the Archie Miller era, to see these 3 guards really step up and carry the weight for this team against North Carolina, against Caleb Love and RJ Davis. That's what I'm really paying attention to. By the way, there is a fun note here with Miller Kopp and Pete Nance, former roommates at Northwestern, now in Power 5 programs that are ranked in the top 25 and playing an important role there. Charlie, it's time. I'm going to start with you first. Who do you think wins this game between Indiana and North Carolina, and by how much? Ken Pom has this one 74-68 in favor of Indiana.
I was so disgustingly wrong when it came to the Xavier prediction. I would like to apologize for that. That's my bad.
It happens. It happens.
A lot to me. I'm terrible at this game. I think IU's going to win. I'm going to be safe this time. IU's going to win. It's going to be an offense versus offense this game. I'm going 78-69.
Oh, Indiana's going to win. All right. I mean, they're going to cover, it looks like, per your thought process, and that was a safe prediction from Charlie Mason. Matt, how about you? Who do you think wins this game at Assembly Hall on Wednesday night, and by how much?
I think I've shared my opinion on this game a couple times now, but to be honest, I do think IU wins. I've been pretty correct on saying that for every game so far this year, so I have 100% record on that one. No, IU wins. I'm gonna say by 15. I said 20 earlier. It was a bit of an exaggeration, by 5 points, but no, they should cover in this game for sure. If you're betting on that, don't. If you're an IU fan, don't bet on them to cover. Put like $2 on UNC. Emotionally hedge this game. That's what I always do. I'm not even gonna lie to you. I emotionally hedge every game. I'm down about $25 this year.
All right, well,
but it's gamble responsibly.
Only
like,
what you can afford to lose. I think that's what
exactly.
the experts say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like I said, I just lose an extra McChicken every time.
Exactly.
So again, if it can buy you McChicken, it's worth losing. So again, IU should win this game pretty handily. I'm expecting a monster breakout. Not a breakout performance. It's hard to say that Tracy's going to be kind of a breakout performance,
No,
but I
yeah.
do think people will start talking about Wooden Award hype for Trace for real after this game. If it goes the way I think it does, I think Xavier Johnson will earn a lot of respect from people. Again, national media loves Caleb Love. For lack of a better word, loves Caleb Love.
Mm-hmm.
No, they do. They adore him. And rightfully so. He's very fun to watch. He would have been fantastic in Indiana uniform. But if Xavier Johnson can have his way with Caleb,
Mm-hmm.
in that matchup specifically, I think he'll get a ton of respect. Again, I was out there talking again for Xavier Johnson to be the best point guard in the Big Ten, and everybody was like, "No, it's AJ Ogard. No, it's what's his name, Chucky Hepburn."
Yeah.
I'm like, guys, come on. It has to be Xavier Johnson. So again, he could put himself in that conversation again, rightfully so. By the way, Miller Kopp, if he has a fantastic performance at home, people will actually legitimately start dialing in on him. As again, I felt like this year he's just been one of those guys where teams are like, if he shoots it, he shoots it. Like, it's whatever. If he has a really good game against North Carolina, he's somebody you can see like people having like just the basketball version of having a QB spy. Basically, if there's going to be somebody attached to Miller Kopp's hip at all time, and the remaining matchups this year, which would be good for IU's offensive production. So again, look for those three guys for me to have big games. The freshmen are going to do freshman things in this game, but if the bench can have their way with basically UNC starters, can they only play 6 players, right? I don't know why Hubert Davis does this. I think he's trying to murder the North Carolina players and have them completely worn out by February. But he basically plays them all 40 minutes. If the bench can have their way with the UNC starters and look good, I'm going to genuinely be over the moon. So big game on Wednesday, and I'm very excited to see what the Hoosiers can do.
Yeah, same here. I can't wait to see this contest. I think this game is really tricky for Indiana because up until Friday, at least Saturday, we can say Indiana and North Carolina was really built up as this heavyweight showdown, rightfully so, right? But then North Carolina had just this tournament from hell in Portland, and now no one, except maybe the most devout North Carolina fans, expect all that much from the Tar Heels coming to Bloomington. This team with Caleb Love and RJ Davis, Leaky Black, Pete Nance, possibly Armando Bacot. For some reason, people don't expect North Carolina. I understand they had a tough weekend, but there is going to be no expectation on the Tar Heels' shoulders when they come into Assembly Hall. I know, I get it. And I think Indiana's going to score. But I also think North Carolina is going to score. They're going to play a free-spirited basketball game up and down the court, and they're going to take threes, and they're going to try to play one-on-one basketball. They don't generate many assists as it is. And then in a close game, North Carolina is shooting 75% from the free throw line this season. And I'm really nervous about seeing this Indiana-North Carolina game on Wednesday night. I do have Indiana winning, but I think it's going to be an 80-78 final down to the final moments in this contest. I think you're going to see Xavier Johnson. This is my premonition here. I think you're going to see Xavier Johnson hit 1 or 2 big shots in crunch time for Indiana to help the Hoosiers get the win. But Mike Woodson will have plenty to work on over the next couple of days in the back half of the week before IU takes on Rutgers Saturday afternoon.
All I'd say, Nathan, is yes, this North Carolina team has played a national title.
That's what I'm saying. I
don't think again, last year they were not good until the end of the year. They didn't click. They were really bad. They were an 8 seed.
It's true. Yeah, they were. Yeah.
And they were underperforming.
Yeah.
And also at the same time, they have not played in an environment that will be even close.
No, they won't. It's
true. Well,
actually,
no, they played in one environment. They played the Coach K's last home game. They won.
Correct.
and Cameron. But
Yeah.
like to Cameron's a fantastic environment, don't get me wrong. But I mean, 17,000 people screaming at you is different than
I mean,
6,000.
North Carolina went into that game with almost no pressure on their shoulders. If I recall, they had clinched an at-large bid in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
And kind of played with, house money, for lack of a better phrase.
The pressure's on them, though, in this game. I mean, it's on Indiana, too. But, again, they're coming off of losing 2 games. They have to perform. And now you're going into, very, very hostile territory. I mean, like, again, this is Indiana. This is Assembly Hall's first big non-conference game under Mike Woodson.
Yeah,
where Indiana is actually
St. John's. St. John's.
No, exactly. No, it's the first. It's the first big one.
Yeah,
it is. Yeah, it's the first big game at home under Mike Woodson. Yeah. All that hope, all of that belief is going to come out, pouring out of the IU fans in this game. It's going to be a very special, unique environment. So, Charlie, since you're going to be there, enjoy it, soak it up. You don't know how many times you're going to see this in your time at IU. So it will be a very special atmosphere for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be absolutely fantastic. And the TV coverage is going to be awesome as well. That Wednesday night broadcast with Dan Schulman, Jay Billis too. They usually bring it. I especially want to focus on the Dan Schulman piece of it. He's excellent. I really like him. He brings his A+ game to the table.
No, I was going to make a Bill Walton joke. I was like, what do you mean Bill Walton is going to be at this game? Come on.
Yeah, well, hey, look, Indiana, North Carolina, Wednesday night. It should be absolutely outstanding. Before we preview Indiana against Rutgers on Saturday afternoon, it's time for our social media shout out, and we have to address the abhorrent conditions that the Indiana women's team played in over the course of the weekend in Vegas. The Hoosiers took care of business, winning both of their games, but not without a consequence of an injury to Grace Berger. We haven't heard an official update on her status yet. We do know she received an MRI after returning to Bloomington from Vegas, where it was an absolute crap show over the course of the Las Vegas Invitational, where Indiana played along with a handful of other teams. And you've seen the images all across social media. If you have not yet, our formal social media shout out, I guess, will be ESPN. The ESPN Twitter account officially brought in Terry Morin's thoughts and comments from the playing conditions at the Las Vegas Invitational and how ridiculous they were. Frankly, unfit for any basketball tournament, let alone one and Division I college basketball. I will say the one thing that infuriated me more than anything else were people citing Indiana's ranking as some sort of reason that this tournament should not be played. It didn't matter that Indiana was number 6. It made absolutely no difference what Indiana's ranking was. No basketball team, men's, women's, high school, college, you name it, should be subject to those conditions where they play in a hotel ballroom. Very different than the terms that were agreed to, according to Terry Morin, where it was deceptive and dangerous to everyone involved. You saw a couple of injuries that we talked about. Grace Berger, there was an Auburn player who was injured or needed paramedic assistance, and it took over half an hour to get that to her as well. Hopefully we never see Indiana or another college basketball team or high school basketball team or a middle school basketball team have to play a tournament in a hotel ballroom like that, which again, did not even provide fans of any of those programs to really have an exciting experience in Las Vegas. You're going to see a major contrast to when Indiana plays Arizona in Vegas in a couple of weeks, where you're going to have 17,000 people in attendance and all the amenities that you could think of. So total disgrace over the course of the weekend. Fortunately for Hoosier fans, IU did win both of those games. Incredible start to the season for the women's program, even though Nicole Cardano-Hillary moved on to the next level. Alexa Gulbe moved on to the next level. You saw Ali Patberg get drafted as well by the Indiana Pacers. New players at key spots, but the Hoosiers now have vaulted to number 5 in the country as of the most recent AP Top 25. They swept the Player of the Week and the Freshman of the Week in the Big Ten for the first time in school history, with Mackenzie Holmes taking home the Player of the Week and Yarden Garzone taking home the Freshman of the Week. And if Grace Berger is out for an extended period of time, make sure you get familiar with Yarden Garzone. Not
Yarden's
only
so good,
someone who's going to make a long-term impact at Indiana, but one who's going to already, as you've seen thus far, make a short-term impact. So The women's program off to an exceptional start. Terry Moore, and I keep mentioning this, folks. I mean, Indiana's women's basketball team was very similar as far as stature and pedigree as Indiana's football program. And imagine if Indiana's football program was consistently in the top 10 in college football in the FBS. It's hard
So you're saying Terry
envision.
Morin for an Indiana football head coach?
I'm not gonna lie. I actually thought Terry Morin should have been in consideration after Archie Miller got fired. I don't know if that was even a thought process for Scott Dolson, but hey, look, the women's team now faces North Carolina, just like the men's team, on Thursday in the Big Ten ACC Challenge. North Carolina's women's program, very much an outstanding team, just like their men as far as being ranked. North Carolina's women, though, are number 6. So you got number 5 Indiana versus number 6 North Carolina at 5 o'clock Eastern at Assembly Hall. Make sure you get there. Free tickets for students. If you can't make it, Big Ten Network is your spot for that contest. A reminder, folks, after our very thorough social media shout out, you can follow us on all social media channels, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. You can find us at Indiana HQ and at the Hoosier Sound. Matt, on Instagram, we're not Indiana HQ, but what are we?
Indiana.HQ.
That's where you can find us there. We're going to have all sorts of content for you coming up this week from Assembly Hall, as well as Jersey Mike's Arena in Piscataway, New Jersey, informally known as the RAC, the Rutgers Athletic Center, where Indiana takes on the Rutgers Scarlet Knights at 4 p.m. Eastern on Big Ten Network. Rutgers not receiving votes in the AP Top 25. However, they are number 36 in the Ken Pom ratings and off to a 5-1 start. Not too bad for Rutgers, even though they did trip up against Temple on a neutral site. Rutgers does play at Miami on Wednesday in the Big Ten ACC Challenge before returning to New Jersey to play the Hoosiers on Saturday. Steve Peichel has done an excellent job at Rutgers. He's in his 7th season, tallied up over 100 career wins at Rutgers over the course of his time there. Took them to the NCAA tournament for the first time in 20 years, including a win in the 2021 NCAA tournament. I believe it was against Clemson. The issue I know most Indiana fans have is that Rutgers has beaten Indiana 5 straight times head-to-head. Yeah, 5 straight for the Rutgers Scarlet Knights, as well as 7 of 8 going back to March 2018. This year, they do not have Ron Harper Jr. and Geo Baker. Both players moved on. But once again, Charlie, this Rutgers Scarlet Knights rotation is pretty tight. We'll see what the playing status is for Caleb McConnell as well as Paul Mulcahy coming up. But Cliff Omoruiz, the preseason first team all Big Ten center for the Scarlet Knights, you call him a forward, I guess. As you look at this game, Charlie, the first battle Indiana has to face is a quick turnaround after North Carolina. The second battle is a hostile environment and a sold out already Jersey Mike's Arena at Rutgers. And then the third battle is a really good defensive team in Rutgers. What are one of the 2 things you're going to pay attention to as Indiana takes on the Scarlet Knights?
That's a lot. That's a lot of adversity that IU's going to have to get through. And I think a lot of it depends on how this North Carolina game goes. But assuming everything goes all right, no injuries, nothing huge happens. I think it's going to depend, though, on whether or not they win this North Carolina game. If they come out of this North Carolina game on top, this Rutgers game becomes very winnable. You're on the road, but you're on a roll. People are paying attention. You're number 10 now. That North Carolina win bumps you up. If you're Mike Woodson, you're not directing the players towards the number that ranks you, obviously. You're trying to focus on your game plan. And that's where Trace Jackson Davis and Race Thompson kind of have to team up against, like you said, one of the best centers in the Big Ten. It's going to be very difficult for them, I think, to face off against 2 very good centers back-to-back. Obviously, North Carolina has a lot more holes than this Rutgers team does. Rutgers only has 1 loss to Temple, who is kind of showing up this year. I don't know if they beat Villanova, but it was a close game.
They did beat Villanova.
They beat Villanova, which is a great win. And Rutgers kept it close. I'm looking at it now. It's a 6-point margin. It was a 6-point loss. So Rutgers is no joke. They're not ranked, but it's going to be very tight.
They'll be an NCAA tournament team almost certainly, unless
will they though?
Yeah.
I think they will. I don't know. I mean, they could miss.
How many Big Ten teams are getting in though?
9.
Oh.
We'll keep an eye on it as things go on. We'll keep an eye on it as things go on. But you're right, Charlie. I mean, Trace Jackson Davis, it's always, to me, especially on the road, you really try to lean on your stars as much as you can. Matt, as you look at this Rutgers team, yeah, Temple's on their schedule, but really their degree of difficulty has been very minimal to this point until they go to Miami on Wednesday. And then you have your Big Ten double whammy with Indiana, Ohio State coming up for the Scarlet Knights. This is a team, Matt, that just overall keeps giving Indiana problems. And thus far, Mike Woodson 0 for 1 against the Scarlet Knights. Harper and Baker are out the door, but this is a team that's going to give Indiana fits. Who are 1 or 2 Indiana Hoosiers that you're looking to step up on Saturday afternoon?
All right, so again, Trace has to be the National Player of the Year. Not just candidate, I think National Player of the Year.
Yeah.
But he should be. And then 2, you definitely need one of the freshmen to have a really good game. I don't know if it's going to be Jalen Hood-Schifino.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's going to be Renew coming in, but one of them is going to need to have a fantastic game against Rutgers. Again, you're going to need somebody that, you just don't normally count on in a Big Ten road game to have a good game. So again, freshman, you can add Tamar Bates to that as well. I think, again, somebody either off the bench or the freshmen that are going to need to step up for this game. But I would also like to point out, when Rutgers hasn't looked too hot, I like to see what they do against Miami on Wednesday. It's a okay Miami team. Again, the ACC is so bad. They're just so awful. From top to bottom, they're just bad. Other than Virginia, I think Virginia gets a pass. But again, outside of Virginia, there's a cliff that falls off to North Carolina, and then there's another cliff that falls off to Duke, and then Virginia Tech, and then there's a black hole vortex, and then there's the rest of the ACC. So again, I can't say like Miami's going to be like, oh, if they win that Miami game, they're going to you better watch out. But if they win the Miami game, like, okay,
it's a feather in their cap.
It's a feather in their cap for sure. And again, they've been playing all year, to be fair, without star guard Paul Mulcahy.
Yes,
he's one of the best guards in the Big Ten, especially one of the best returning guards at the Big Ten. So again, if they have him back on Wednesday, they're expecting him back soon, I believe, because again, I do the other podcast I do that talks about all the Big Ten teams. They're expecting him back soon.
Yes.
I have a feeling that if he's not back on Wednesday, he will be back on Saturday. So that's another factor again. But again, he's coming off an injury. He's going to be not exactly totally fully fit. So again, what are we going to be really expecting from him? Again, the game, their team really, Caleb McConnell's a fantastic one-on-one defender. Omar Rui is a tough, just all around, he would be one of the best players in the conference, or talked about as one of the best players in the conference universally if he played anywhere but Rutgers. And that's totally disrespect to Rutgers. Again, it's Rutgers basketball. People don't think about them as being super good. They are very good. They're much better than people actually expect them to be. Andre Hyatt's pretty good. Again, Cam Spencer's pretty good. There's a lot of guys on this team that are pretty good. And they all play very well together as a unit, especially if Mulcahy's playing. Mulcahy hasn't played it so far this year. Again, I'll reiterate that. So again, they'll probably spring up a surprise against Indiana. They probably should be prepared. Again, this is a team you've seen, again, under the Woodson era, but especially these players have seen multiple years in a row now. Should be fully prepared. Should be a tight game. I still fully expect the Hoosiers to win this. They should win this. And if the losing streak to Rutgers continues, I'm going to lose my damn mind. So hopefully that changes. And maybe the curse of the rack is over since they've changed it to the Jimmy John Center, or is it the Jersey Mike's?
The Quiznos venue? No, it's the Jersey Mike's. The Jersey Mike's Arena,
Subway Stadium.
I was hoping it was Jimmy John's. I'm more of a Jersey Mike's guy than a Jimmy John's guy, and I can't have Rutgers being sponsored by Good Subs and Hoagies. Come on now.
If Cindy, Simon Scott, and Jersey Mike got into a cage fight,
Cindy Simon Scott buys Warriors and wins that by a lot. Okay. Jersey Mike ain't got nothing on the Simons. That's all I got to say.
I'm happy you mentioned Cam Spencer, Matt. The transfer guard has lit it up for Rutgers this season, averaging 50% from three effectively on 5 attempts from deep per game. He is a new face on this Rutgers team. I think last year, Indiana, in the last couple of years, saw Geo Baker, and Baker was really good in crunch time, but he was a volume shooter. Someone put up 15 shots, and it wouldn't always be the most efficient performance from Baker. Spencer's the opposite. Maybe he's not ice in the veins type of player that Geo Baker is, but when he takes those threes, they go in frequently for him. So he's a new face that Indiana fans can pay attention to here, perhaps if you're tuning into Rutgers Miami on Wednesday. I'm just, as I look at this game, to me, the key number is 12. What's 12? 12 is, I think, the number of turnovers Indiana can afford to guarantee a win on Saturday. It may sound like, wow, 12, it's quite a bit. Rutgers has forced at least 14 turnovers in each of their games this year, including 25 on multiple occasions. Yes, they came against worse opponents, but Rutgers gets their hands in the passing lanes. They disrupt opposing offenses, and they turn those takeaways into points at the other end of the court. Folks, if Indiana keeps it 12 or under, the turnover category, the Hoosiers will come out on top against the Scarlet Knights. Guys, if we look at this matchup, if we look at this matchup, KenPom projects Indiana to come out on top with a 69-66 victory. It's going to be a slower tempo, I believe. Anything can happen, but slower tempo, I believe, than the North Carolina contest that Indiana plays on Wednesday. Matt, I'll start with you. Who do you think wins this game, and by how much?
Again, like I said, I've been 100% on my predictions so far this year. So I will continue to be 100%. By the way, I got the Xavier prediction pretty correct too, didn't I?
Yeah.
So again, IU will win.
Ooh,
Close game.
All right.
Nail biter. Offense is going to be annoying against a very good Rutgers defense. It's going to be low scoring. Cam Spencer's going to hit some threes that are going to piss some people off. IU wins 60-58.
Ooh.
There you go. There's
Barn
the line. And Trace Davis will have 23 in that game.
Okay, very good. Charlie, over to you. Who do you think wins this Indiana Rutgers matchup on Saturday, and by how much?
I'm going IU 64-60. I think, like Matt said, it's going to be low scoring, a lot of annoying defense and offense matchups between IU and Rutgers, which is going to make people mad. And then obviously the three ball. But I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to come down to a 30-second foul situation. IU hits both free throws to separate them. Can't get any shots off in the last second. IU wins. I do think Trace Jackson Davis is going to have at least 20. I do agree with that. I think he's going to pop off.
Wonderful. I actually think I'm going to give Indiana their first loss here. I think Indiana loses to Rutgers on Saturday.
Boo this man.
This is kind of Rutgers' version of Indiana, North Carolina, where, again, their arena is sold out for this contest. Rutgers hasn't had too much wear and tear on their tires thus far. Generally easy strength of schedule coming into this game. Miami will be tough-ish, but overall, I think Rutgers is getting as healthy as they've been all season. I think they do come out on top here, beating Indiana 68-65 in a close one. I have the Scarlet Knights coming out on top here. I think Indiana will use this one. It's a valuable teaching tool going forward to Nebraska, Arizona, Kansas, those matchups here. And then, of course, full-on Big Ten play. But I do think Indiana comes out with an L this week on Saturday afternoon. Now, over on the Hoosier Sound Weekly podcast poll, we asked all of you what you thought Indiana was going to do this week. Do you figure that Indiana will take wins in both games, split them, or come out winless? The positivity is flowing right now among Hoosier Nation. 81% of you say that Indiana is going to finish the week 2-0. Charlie and Matt do agree with you as well. Charlie, as we wind down here on this Monday night, what are your final thoughts? Lots to discuss here. Indiana's athletic department really delivering in multiple facets right now, and the men's basketball team has a huge week coming up.
Yep.
It's been an interesting football season. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
Terry Morin might as well coach them next year. Honestly, it's going to be tough. It's going to be a rebuilding year. I think Matt is close to the percentage of minutes that are going to be gone from the starting lineup. The transfer portal has changed the game and not in IU's favor. Well, that's yet to be seen, but as of right now, it's not looking great. IU football, close the door. It's basketball season. IU versus North Carolina. I think if you're looking to keep up the reputation that you've already developed, it's a must-win. And I think it's got to be with style too. So I don't think if you keep it close within 3 or 4 points, you're going to look. People are going to start looking like, oh, it's either going to be, oh, IU might be shaky too, or maybe North Carolina's got some grit. I think there are 2 different ways that a close game can be viewed, and people are going to blow both of them out of proportion. So I think if you're IU, you win by at least 7 or 8, cover the spread, move on, travel to Rutgers, and just win by any means possible. It doesn't have to be a blowout. It's not going to be a blowout. If you can secure a win in the messiest way possible, in the least Mike Woodson coaching way possible, 30 turnovers. Obviously, that's something Rutgers is good at. 30 turnovers and a victory is still a win in my book. If you can come out of this week 7-0, 8-0, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they'd be 8-0.
You probably have a top 5 Hoosiers next Monday when the polls come out.
Yep. So if you can match up with Purdue in those early rankings, then I think you're looking at a Big Ten championship run.
Can't wait.
Possible.
Wait. Matt, your final thoughts here as we close up shop here on this Monday night.
I'd like to say I'm gonna take a victory lap here. I did say 3-9 or 4-8 for the football team, and damn if I was right. Some of us were a little bit more enthusiastic, Nathan.
Yeah. Hey, look, it's life.
Some of us picked us going to a bowl game.
Life, hey, if they had just won their other 7, they just won their other 8 games, they would have been in the bowl game. That's it. Anyway.
Yeah. So again, I like to take a victory lap. I told y'all before the season this was gonna happen. And again, this is on the backs of them not making changes in the offseason in positions that were needed. They needed to get rid of the offensive coordinator. They did that. They also needed to get rid of their offensive line coach. They did not. And the offensive line suffered to begin the year. It only got better when the coaching changed. Surprise? I think not. And so again, going into next year, changes are needed at quarterback, changes are needed at running back, changes are needed at wide receiver and offensive line and defensive end and defensive tackle and corner and linebacker and safety and husky.
And playing surface too.
Playing surface and hell, build a new stadium. I don't care at this point. It has to be. Again, all I'm saying is there needs to be changes in Indiana. I need to see them doing something proactive this offseason. I don't want to see a lot of stagnation. I want to see them going after some of the top targets in the portal. If Nebraska, who's hapless and still has Scott Frost, can go and get somebody like Casey Thompson from Texas, if they can go and get big time transfers, there's no reason why Indiana, who has Tom Allen, who had more success at Indiana than Scott Frost had at Nebraska, can't go and get some really good players, some really good Power 5 teams. Go and get some of the more promising guys coming out of the group of 5, right? Go and look at the ranks. Can't say if you can't go find another camper, somebody like that, right? Like, go and be proactive. Go and actually try to add people that legitimately could compete for starting spots. For instance, what's the offensive lineman that transferred from Michigan that did not play a ton this year? Zach Carpenter didn't play a ton this year, correct?
Very seldom last season. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So again, go and get guys that actually played at their schools, right? Don't just go get guys that haven't. So again, I'm sitting here, I'm begging Tom Allen in the program to actually go and shoot for the stars on people and do whatever you got to do to get these people there. I could care less what they have to do, how many hours of work they have to put in, whatever. Do whatever they have to do to make the program better going into next year, because to be honest, it's for your job. 3 years in a row at 3-9 or 2-10 or 1-11 or however 4-8, right? If you're gonna have seasons like that 3 years in a row, it's gonna be unacceptable, to be honest, in the climate of college football. It's unacceptable to have it 2 years in a row. It's unacceptable to have it 1 year in a row, but it's definitely unacceptable to have it 3 years in a row. Third time's a charm, and Tom Allen's gonna have to be finding another place of employment next year if the season ends up like this. And then again, college basketball, I talked about it, before. This goes for men's and women's. I'm very excited what they're doing. They're both top 10 programs now. We can now say that the basketball program in general is in a better spot than Purdue because their women's program is laughable and ours is not. So suck it. Yeah, I'm very happy with what's happened so far in college basketball. I'm really looking forward to the games this week. I'm going to be absolutely terrified about that game, Rutgers, because I feel something bad happening. And then also Nathan said that we're going to lose, which means we probably will lose because Nathan somehow comes up with these correct assumptions. So again, if we lose, blame Nathan.
Yeah. Please do not send anything to my house or my apartment. Please, not asking for that. It's interesting to think about specifically the men's basketball side of things, where yes, top 10 program, women's team top 10 as well. One of 2 schools, I believe UConn is the other, with top 10 men's and women's teams. One of 6 schools, I believe, with undefeated men's and women's basketball teams as well. Amazing job, basketball powerhouse. Indiana is back, but Purdue is back, and Michigan State is back, and Michigan, not so much. Maryland, Illinois, Iowa, all kind of back.
Michigan is not back.
And I'm fired up, baby. I was down more than anyone else as far as the Big Ten is concerned. I literally thought Indiana could walk through the Big Ten like Gonzaga walks through the West Coast Conference. And that's not going to be the case this year. And that's really exciting to me personally. I started really plugging myself into Indiana basketball around 2008, 2009. And Indiana and Purdue have not been elite, both of them, in the same season. So if that's what we're going to get here, sign me up. And if this is going to be 5 or 6 teams in the Big Ten consistently in the top 25, and then we'll see what happens with Michigan, Rutgers, and Penn State, and whoever else in that next grouping of teams back there. But let's go. Give me a high intensity Big Ten title race where Indiana and Purdue are part of it. 2 matchups in February, Bloomington, West Lafayette. Both will have much better crowds than Portland in the PK85. But that about wraps it up here on episode 274. It was a joke. I mean, what are we doing here? Anyway,
I know.
Wraps it up. Episode 274 of the Hoosier Sound. We really appreciate your support. To more fantastic episodes like the one you heard today, be sure to follow us at Indiana HQ and at the Hoosier Sound to make sure you don't miss any in the future. You can also go to our website, indianahq.com, to find it all in one place. But as always, thank you for listening, Hoosier Nation, and we will see you next time.
Peace and love. Go Hoosiers.